Hello! And welcome back! Let's talk video games. I collect them. You guys probably know that already. And with that being said, that means I've collected some things this past month. This past month being November. The tongue's already getting tied. November was great because I got a chance to go to Retro Game Con 6 in Syracuse, New York. I am a native New Yorker, but I live here on Long Island, so I ended up driving upstate with my friends Joe, Dustin, and we met my friends Zoe, who's Dustin's girlfriend, and Chandra there, because they live in Buffalo. So they drove down, we drove up, and we kissed in the middle, and we went together to that con. But other than that, I picked up a lot of good things outside the con, after the con, during the entire month of November. And there goes my light shield. That's just how magical this sort of thing is. So I'm going to put that back up, and let's talk video games. So the first thing that I picked up, or one of the first things that I picked up at Retro Game Con, was something that I'm looking for pretty much anytime I go anywhere because I'm a big sucker for cartoons that I grew up with. And I think in previous episodes of this collection series, I've talked about at least one of these games, but I collect pretty much games that have to do with cartoons I grew up with, one of those being the Powerpuff Girls. And on Game Boy Color, there's a trilogy of games starring the Powerpuff Girls, one for each Powerpuff Girl. There's Bad Mojo Jojo, starring Blossom, and Paint the Townsville Green, starring Buttercup. And I got one of those, I don't remember which one actually, while this series was happening. The other one I actually got last year sometime in like April. Actually, I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah. But anyway, at Retro Game Con, my buddy Joe noticed Battle Hymn, starring Bubbles, in a bin marked $1 games. So yes, of course I got this. So yeah, Battle Hymn is the last one that I needed in the trilogy of Powerpuff Girls games for Game Boy Color. So I'm really happy that I picked it up, and I'm really happy that Joe pointed it out to me. Because I may not have noticed it, because typically I don't sift through the dollar games because I know they're just common titles, and they're typically sport titles and things of that nature that no one cares to pick up, which I will pick up eventually. We've talked about this. I tend not to pick up common games because I can get them anytime, really. But I'm really glad that Joe picked this out, because Joe does look for common games because he just wants to play. He's not an idiot collector like I am. So, Battle Hymn, starring Bubbles. I know the names of the Powerpuff Girls, it's hard for me to speak right now, because I'm so excited about Battle Hymn for Game Boy Color. Let's move on. We'll stick in the same realm, and we'll talk about another handheld game that I got. So, I only got the one Game Boy Color game, but I did get one original Game Boy game, although this one you guys probably have never heard of. It's Kairu no Tame ni Kane wa Naru, or roughly translated to English, For Frog the Bell Tolls, which is a Japanese-only release. Yeah! So, this is, I'm actually not super familiar with the gameplay, I just know about it, I know the history behind it, because the main character, the Prince of Sable, appears in Super Smash Bros. Melee as a trophy, I believe, and Brawl and Smash 4 as an assist trophy, I'm pretty sure. I know that he's in the games, I just don't remember in what form exactly. But yeah, you might recognize that face. So there you go. A Japanese-only release, we never got it here, although there is a beautiful nod to it in The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. There is a character, I believe his name is Richard, who hangs out with a bunch of frogs near Canelet Castle. And that's actually a reference to this game. In this game, there's a character named Richard. And there's a lot of frogs in this game. Frog time. Really fun game. I haven't played it, but I've seen a little bit of footage. But it was so long ago, I don't really remember anything that I saw. I just remember looking at it and going, oh man, I want to play that. Unfortunately, for many of you, not unfortunately for me, because I can speak Japanese, you need to know Japanese to play this game. It's very text-heavy, so good luck, although I believe you can find patches of it online to play in emulators in English, or whatever language it is you speak. So yeah, For Frog the Bell Tolls. Let's do it. As much as I love to talk about each game individually, sometimes it's difficult to do so because there really isn't a lot to say about the game. However, that's usually not because the game is bad. It could just be because the game is incredibly old and primitive, and so it doesn't really have a lot going for it as far as story or gameplay. So, with that being said, I'm just going to talk about a bunch of Intellivision games that I got. There was a booth at Retro Game Con that was just like, here's some 70s and early 80s games. If you want these, they're just $1 a piece. So I went and I got 7. And he was like, $7. And I was like, since I'm getting all 7 of these, would you consider just doing 5 for me? And he said yes. And I was very happy about that. It saved me $2, which I used to buy something else. But I actually have 8 Intellivision games in front of me, because I attended a Jackbox Party Pack Let's Play session, sort of, at the convention. A bunch of attendees and also panelists were playing together. And at the end of the at the end of the panel, I guess I'll call it a panel, one of the panelists, I don't know if he found this game or if he just had it in like a box or something, but he just holds up this game and goes, does anybody here have an Intellivision? And like, I slowly raised my hand because I didn't want to seem too eager, just in case. Like, I was going to come off like I was bragging. But also nobody else raised their hand, so I guess that goes to show how crazy of a collector I am. But I'll start off with this one, actually. He handed me a copy of Carnival for Intellivision. This is a Sega game. It's just, as far as I know, it's a collection of small Carnival mini-games on Intellivision, so it's very primitive. But that was cool to get. I got this game literally because I owned it in Intellivision and was sitting in the right place at the right time. Pretty cool. Alright, but let's talk about the other 7 that I picked up for that $5. Frogbog. Frogbog is probably the, well, not this one exactly. Frogs and Flies is. This is a clone of Frogs and Flies. But Frogs and Flies was the very first video game to feature a jumping character. In this case, a frog. It's not a platform game, but it is the first game to feature a character who jumps, which we all know how that turned out in the future. It's arcade style. You play either against the computer or against an opponent, and you're jumping from lily pad to lily pad trying to collect frogs. Trying to collect flies. You are a frog, and the most flies wins. That's Frog Mode. Of course, a bunch of third-party companies made things for the Intellivision. As you can tell with Carnival, this cartridge doesn't look anything like this one. This is an official Intellivision cartridge by Mattel. This is not. And this is not either. This is Dragonfire by iMagic. This was released on a slew of different consoles, but I got it for Intellivision because, well, it was there. I really don't know too much about Dragonfire, but a lot of iMagic's games were pretty ahead of their time when they came out. This one, as far as I remember, it's from '82, I think. I'm looking for a date on here. Yeah, there is a date on here. It says 82. So, for 82, you kind of still expect kind of primitive standards from the Intellivision. Although the Intellivision was the very first 16-bit console, it just didn't project 16-bit imagery, if that makes any sense. So, I know it probably doesn't, but bear with me. Dragonfire looks and sounds really good for its time. I recommend giving it a try. I haven't played it, but yeah, it's ahead of its time. What is an early 80s, late 70s console without a bunch of space-related video games? Space-related video games with red labels, to be exact. So here's Astro Smash, Space Battle, and Space Hawk. I really don't know too much about these, but they're space-related, and that was very popular during this era because it was very easy to program. Black background, cover it in dots, look at that, it's space. So that's really all I can say about these 3. Still really happy I got them, though. And the last 2, here's another iMagic game, Atlantis. Pretty much same thing that I have to say about Dragonfire I could say about Atlantis. It looks and sounds ahead of its time. I'm surprised that iMagic didn't go any further, really. I haven't heard anything about them past this era, so who really knows? But there you go. And lastly, Bomb Squad. This is notable because it's one of the games that works with the Intellivoice voice synthesis module for the Intellivision. You plug that into the cartridge port in the Intellivision, then you plug this into the voice synthesis module, and it'll talk to you. Sure, it's fully digitized speech, and they even gave the digitized speech accents. Bomb Squad has an English accent at the title screen, and there's another game, B-17 Bomber, that has a Southern American accent at the title screen, and it's all like, B-17 Bomber. It's really cute. I don't know why they decided to do that, because it was digitized, but whatever. Bomb Squad. Let's talk about other games. I go yard sailing. You guys knew that. My buddy Sean actually visited from Florida for Thanksgiving this past month. And I never really get to go yard sailing with him because, well, he lives in Florida. Joe was down for the count. He was busy with something work-related. And Dustin was very, very tired and did not want to go. So I asked Sean, and he said yeah. So we went yard sailing together. And at an estate sale, I was actually able to pick up Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix. This is a launch title for the PSP. It is not fully complete, though. It doesn't have the instruction manual, but the UMD is in there, and it's in pretty good condition. I'm happy. Are you happy? I really don't play any of the Tony Hawk games. I wasn't into skateboarding when I was a kid. My father bought me a skateboard when I was a kid because everybody else had one. That's all I can say, though. Maybe I can be a skateboarder by playing this. Maybe. While we're on the topic, at that very same estate sale, I also found a copy of Freddy Fish 2, The Case of the Haunted Schoolhouse. I used to play the Freddy Fish games on, PC back in the day. And I know these games are available on Steam now, but that's not what collectors care about. They care about the original stuff. So I saw this, and the front case was actually cracked, so I did have to replace the front of the case, but other than that, it's all in there. It's got everything. I mean, if you can see the front, you know it has the manual, because this literally is the manual, which is a nice touch for dual cases, but of course there's the disc. So it's complete. And I can't play it on this computer because it doesn't run. But that's okay, because I have a computer that can play it. And it will. When I play Freddy Fish 2, The Case of the Haunted Schoolhouse, for Microsoft Windows 95 and 98. When I go to conventions, I've talked about this before, I really like to look for Sega Master System games because my collection is pretty paltry. I don't know if you can see it right there, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th game is over there. So that was it. I had 5 Sega Master System games. So I'm always looking for more. I usually get at least 1 when I go to any convention, but this time, I got 2! Let's talk about them. First of all, Penguin Land. Penguin Land is a really cute game. It's like a puzzle platformer, I guess is how I could describe it. But the cool thing about Penguin Land is the story. Let's read it together. Welcome to Penguin Land, where you're going underground to plan more than your next move. Because now, with the help of a super advanced battery, you can actually design each game maze as you play, and save your maze for more fun later. Here's the setting. You're aboard a cosmic expedition that's full of action and adventure, and guess who's in command? That's right, you're Overbite. That's your name. Commander of a special penguin task force, capital P, capital T, capital F. Your mission? Bring fragile eggs back safely home from a foreign land. Your journey will take you deep into mysterious caverns where dangerous animals await to attack and destroy your eggs. But remember, your spaceship and crew need you too. So be careful not to crack up, because you can't be a hero with egg on your face. And yeah, there are quotes around those words. I love stories, and I love how they try to really hype up this very cutesy game by making it all like, this is action, this is real terror. It's a cute game about some penguins with snags and puzzle platform. Cool. And I also got Outrun, which is it's an arcade port. Outrun is a driving slash racing It's more like a beat the clock type of game, so I can't really call it a racing game, but I guess that's what you call it. Arcade game by Sega. And it's very popular, and it paved the way for a lot of racing games, even still to this day. People take influence from Outrun when designing racing games. And, well, since it was a Sega game, it obviously got ported to the Sega Master System because Sega didn't have to ask anybody to do so. And it's on Genesis, and there's versions of Outrun, and my refrigerator can run Outrun. So, yeah, it's cool. And by the way, in case you were curious, Outrun is complete, and so is Penguin Land. I ain't no stooge. I'm Overbite, commander of a special penguin task force. There's really nothing too awesome about the back of Outrun. I like the back of Penguin Land because it tries to be edgy in a very cutesy game. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate Sega Master System. I wish more people did. It's a good thing people in Brazil do, otherwise that thing would probably have faltered and died. Like it did anyway. Of course I buy new games instead of old games. I'm sorry, did I say instead? I meant along with. I almost gave myself a heart attack there. It's Pokemon Let's Go Eevee! Because, you know, growing up, when I got Yellow version, I was forced to choose Pikachu. So, of course, I was going to get the one that I didn't already have an experience with. I haven't played too much of this yet, but from what I've played, I'm enjoying it, even though they changed the formula a lot. But it's a really good first Pokemon game, and I'm saying that not just because it's pretty easy to get into, but also because, well, we're back to the original 151 Pokemon only, plus 2 newcomers, Meltan and whatever his evolved form is, because I still haven't learned it yet. But yeah, 153 Pokemon total, and they're, well, with the exception of Meltan and his evolved form, they're all from Generation 1, which is really easy to keep track of, and it's pretty simple. There aren't too many tricks, and there's really no bullshit. So it's an incredibly easy game for kids to get into, or newcomers to Pokemon in general. And of course, it's rated E, so it's for everyone. Yeah. Also, the inside is a map of the Kanto region, which I love, and the cartridge isn't in there because it's in my Switch, because, you know, I'm playing it. Yeah. For $60, it is a pretty watered-down experience for Pokemon, but it is a first-party Nintendo game, so I guess $60 is well worth it. I mean, I spent full price on pretty much every other Pokemon game I ever bought, and I never complained. So I'm not going to complain now, I just figured I'd mention it. Let's go, Eevee! When I'm at conventions, if I can pick up any games, it's already a win-win situation. I win because I get the game, and they win because they get my money. But if I can get more than just a game, and not have to pay too much extra, then I'm pretty happy. And that case came up. Because one booth was selling Adventures of Lolo for well below retail, and they even included the manual. So I basically got the game cheaper than normal, with the manual, which means the manual was basically just a freebie. Which is really cool. Adventures of Lolo is a puzzle game, and it was made by HAL Laboratory, the same people that made Kirby, and the same people who made Rollerball, the pinball game on NES that I don't like. But they really only made a handful of games that I don't like, and a billion games that I do like, and Adventures of Lolo is one of those games that I love. It's a puzzle game. It's really, really fun. The only problem with this game is that it has one music track, and it's like a 12-second loop or something like that, and it plays through the whole game. But it's still a fun game. I guess just mute the TV and put on some Slayer. Why did I do this? I meant it. You know what? Here you go. Clacks. What is this channel? As I've stated before, I am a member of Long Island Retro Gaming on Facebook, and from time to time when people post sales, I jump on those sales, and somebody was selling off their collection to make some extra money. That's unfortunate. I don't like it when other collectors have to sell their collection to make extra money. They have to give up what they love just because they can't afford to live, and that really sucks. I wish I could have helped out another way. But he was selling off some games, and as much as I'm upset that he's not collecting anymore, or maybe he will still collect, but just had to get rid of some stuff for the time being, at least I could walk away with a game or two and give it a good home. Because he could have easily donated them to, like, Salvation Army or something, and they would have gotten, somebody who thinks it's like a music CD had purchased it or whatever. I got it instead. Sonic Shuffle. Bad game. Very bad game. It's a clone of Mario Party, and an inferior one at that. It's abysmal, actually. It's kind of fun, but only if you really sit down and you are like, okay, we're gonna play through Sonic Shuffle, and everyone's like, all right, I'm in for the long haul, and everybody understands that you're gonna have a terrible time. Then it becomes fun, like that kind of, like, we're all gonna sit and be miserable together. That's Sonic Shuffle. I can't really say too much else about it because I haven't played it a lot because it's terrible, and I don't have many friends who care to play it with me. Maybe someday. We'll see. But of course, you can see the manual, so it's in there. And there's that Disky boy. Oh, and an ad for Somebody Amigo, which is kind of nice. I don't see those anymore, really. Is that fortunate or unfortunate? I don't know. It's not as unfortunate as owning a copy of Sonic Shuffle. What can I say? One of the cooler things about being a video game collector is that sometimes you get games not because you give people money for them, and not necessarily because you get them for free either, but because you have games that you want to get rid of. Like me, I have doubles sometimes, not always, and you can use those to trade for other games. So when my buddy Ben gave me a whole bunch of games in October, there was actually one that I already had, Monopoly. And I also got a Game Genie from him for the Nintendo Entertainment System that I also already had. So I took those with me to Retro Game Con in the hopes that I could find somebody to trade with. And I did. And I was really happy about that. So I traded them both at the same booth because the woman wanted both of them. So I traded Monopoly for a copy of Kung Fu, which, for whatever reason, I didn't have. This is actually this is Kung Fu. It's called Kung Fu in North America, but in Japan it's called Jackie Chan's Kung Fu Super Kicks, or something like that. Actually, I think Kung Fu Super Kicks is a totally different game. It's like Jackie Chan's Kung Fu. So I'm going to put the title down here because I'm not super familiar with the Japanese copy of this, because I guess I don't need to be because we got it in America. But that technically means that this dude is Jackie Chan, even though he doesn't really look like Jackie. Maybe he does. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could tell me. But yeah, it is an action game. It's a scrolling fighter where you play as, I suppose, Jackie Chan, and you beat people up using Kung Fu, which is pretty rad for the 80s. Yeah. And the thing about this game, and you'll see this a lot actually, sometimes when people write it out in text, they'll do this also, but there's an asterisk next to the U in Fu, and that's because down here it says copyright IREM Corporation 1984, because the original game in Japan was actually not a Nintendo title. It was developed by IREM. So when it was ported to the NES in America, it was made a black box title. And most black box titles are basically, Nintendo developed, Nintendo published. But in this case, this was developed by IREM. It's the same game, but it is published by Nintendo, and it's in the action series. Kung Fu. I don't know Kung Fu, and I likely never will. And that's just who I am as a person. In addition to games and consoles and manuals and things of that nature, I also collect merchandise, as long as it's officially licensed. I mean, I do collect merchandise that isn't officially licensed, but only if it's something kind of, weird. But this one guy was selling officially licensed video game toys, and I found an officially licensed Amy Rose figurine from her days in Sonic CD when she was very first introduced. Yeah, it says copyright Sega on the shoe, And I did look it up afterwards just to be totally 100% sure, but this is an official release by Sega. They did actually reissue these later on, but this is directly from the mid-90s when Sonic CD came out. So, check it out! That's really all I can say about her. I love Amy Rose. She's the most annoying character in all of Sonic, but that's not because she's a girl. It's because she's annoying. But she's very cute. So, Amy Rose. Yeah. There are actually two other merchandise-related things that I was able to pick up at Retro Game Con. So I'm going to talk about both of them right now, since I already touched on merchandise with Amy Rose. There was an after-party on the first day of Retro Game Con. After the con was over for the first day, you could go to this other venue, and a whole bunch of celebrities from YouTube would be there, and panelists from the con. And there was a show by Super Thrash Brothers, whom I've actually met because they performed at Long Island Retro Game Con, which is actually called the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. I should just stop babbling and think about what I say before I say it. But after the concert was over, the hype man of the band was giving out some prizes, and he just started throwing shit into the crowd. And he threw so many of these that even though there was a gigantic crowd, both Joe and Dustin and I were all able to get our own officially licensed PlayStation 4 cinch bags. I didn't end up using this at the convention because I brought bags of my own already, but now this is something I can use at future conventions, especially MagFest, which I'll be attending in January, so look forward to that video. But yeah, this is really cool. Joe ended up bringing his later in November to a Silverstein concert that I attended with him and with Dustin, so that he could hold our jackets. And, you know, Silverstein, punk, hard rock sort of thing. That thing got beaten up to shreds, and I don't know if Joe was happy about it or not. It still works, obviously. It's just a bag, but the logo on it got fucking destroyed. So I'm going to use mine in a little bit more temperate environments, I'll say. But yeah, I'm really happy that I picked that up. Mostly off the ground, because it was being thrown wildly by the hype man. But yeah. Thank you, hype man. And thank you, Sony, for making this. I'm going to use it. Let's talk about bags again, but let's talk about retro bags. Back in the day of 80s consoles, 90s consoles, console manufacturers would sometimes just make carrying cases. I don't know where you're taking your NES, because, you know, it's got to be hooked up to a TV. I don't know, maybe if you're going to grandma's and, you know, it's a little boring there, so you want to bring the NES along, you buy yourself a carrying case. And there were a ton of these. Some of them you could rent at Blockbuster. Some of them you could buy. They were mostly hard cases, but Nintendo did produce a couple soft cases, and I just happened to have picked one up for only $5 at Retro Game Con. This is a soft Nintendo Entertainment System carrying case. It's very garish, so it reeks of late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, you can put your games in here. This kind of comes out a little bit to support games. And it just, you know, it opens right up. Put your NES right in there. So yeah, this thing's super cool. I've seen these go for way more than $5 online. So we saw it at this guy's booth, and Joe looked at it and said, "Is that something you would be interested in?" Because, you know, he doesn't really know what is and what isn't collectible, so he just points to things and asks because he's curious, and I appreciate that. And I actually said, "Yeah, that's actually it's a soft cover Nintendo carrying case from the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know exactly when it came out. I could probably check a tag on this thing. I think there's a tag on the inside, but I'll do that later for my own benefit." But he said, "Well, how much do you think it is, or how much is it willing to go for?" And I said, "I'm not really too sure, but I definitely know it goes for more than what I kind of want to pay for it right now." And he said, "Well, what do you want to pay for it right now?" And I looked at him and I was like, are you the dealer? Like, are you trying? He's like, "No, I'm just curious." Well, if it's any more than like $10, maybe $15, I'll probably have to say no to it because I want to save money to buy games for my collection. He was like, "Well, you might as well at least ask." So I did. The guy said $5. I didn't even haggle. There it is. Yeah, it's so garish you can barely make out the Nintendo logo on it with my shitty camera. But, yep. That's a thing that exists. First, there was Super Star Wars. Then there was Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. And then there was Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi, which I picked up at Retro Game Con. Oh man, probably the hardest one in the trilogy. In case you're not aware, the Super Star Wars trilogy of games is based on the trilogy of movies in the Star Wars franchise that range from episodes 4 to 6, also known as the original trilogy, starring Luke Skywalker as the main character and Han Solo, may he rest in peace. But yeah, they are action platformers, and this one's incredibly difficult. They're all incredibly difficult, but I think this one is probably the hardest one. I've never beaten this one, but I've beaten Super Star Wars, and I've beaten Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Some people will refer to these as, the first one they'll call Super Star Wars, because that's literally what it was called when it came out. It wasn't called Super Star Wars A New Hope. I guess they weren't planning on making other ones. But just to shorten the title, sometimes people will call Empire Strikes Back Super The Empire Strikes Back, which is very weird. It's very weird to hear Super The Empire Strikes Back, but they'll also do the same with this one, Super Return of the Jedi. But the full titles of these games are Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back and Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi, which means they look really weird on my shelf because they're out of chronological order. I put them in alphabetical order. So it goes Super Star Wars, then Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi, and then Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Because that "the" is not at the beginning, even though it's after a colon. Look, I don't have to talk to you about my alphabetizing. All you need to know is that Star Wars rocks, and so do this trilogy of games. Sometimes you can use plural verbs for singular nouns if they refer to groups, but I don't think trilogy has a place there. So I mean an oopsie. Oopsie. Everybody's gone cruising. Cruising USA. You like that rendition of the Beach Boys classic Surfing USA? Anyway, it's Cruising USA. Nintendo makes these. Did you know that? You probably didn't, because they barely talk about it. Cruisin' is a series of racing arcade games, but they also came to consoles. Cruisin' USA is the one on Nintendo 64, and it's got some bitchin' music, despite being a pretty common title and a game that nobody really talks about. So yeah, I'm very happy to own that, and it's really all I can say about it. It's good. And I gave it the end label, because I'm cool. There was a booth at Retro Game Con selling a bunch of accessories and peripherals for very, very cheap. And, you know, I spied with my little eye a little thing called the Sega Control Stick. This is a right-handed arcade joystick for Sega Master System. You hold it with your right hand with this weird, it's this big boxy thing, which I guess is cool for your palm. In fact, it fits there quite nicely, but it's so weird seeing this box instead of a ball on top, or even nothing at all, just a stick. But it's right-handed, which I always thought was weird. I don't believe they made a left-handed variant of this, but yeah. Considering the Sega Master System controller is the normal type of controller where the control is on the left and the buttons are on the right, this is weird to me. I don't know why they decided to do that. Maybe give people, you know, a twofer, 2-in-1. You can both have an arcade stick, and guess what? If you are left-handed, now you have button control with your left hands. Haha! We got him there. It's fully functional and it works really well, of course. Being that it's a control stick attached to a wire with no suction cups on the bottom and no mounting, it doesn't work too well unless you press down, otherwise it's going to slip and slide everywhere when you try to do the controls. So a controller is better for most cases. Although, I will say, playing Outrun with this made it feel a lot more like the arcade, even though some versions of Outrun use a steering wheel instead of a joystick. So, does it really feel like the arcade? Even still, this thing exists, and I'm kind of glad that it does. Because it's really cool and weird. Look at it. So when I said I traded some games to this one booth, I did talk about Kung Fu, but the other game that I got was Captain Skyhawk, which I really know nothing about. It's a very common title, I just didn't have it. So I was happy to pick that up also, and That's really all I can say about it. I do think that it's cool that this game was made by Milton Bradley. Many of you might know Milton Bradley because they manufacture board games, but video games were so freaking popular back in the day that fucking Milton Bradley made video games. And I guess they were damn good at it too, because they made a lot, and a lot of people like some Milton Bradley games. But yeah, Captain Skyhawk. It's by Milton Bradley. Wow. It's a green label PlayStation game. Am I happy about that? Well, yes I am. Because it's Crash Bandicoot 2. Vortex Strikes Back. And it's all there. As if it wouldn't be. Oh, I'm so happy to have gotten this, especially after the Insane Trilogy came out. Original copies of the first 3 Crash games went down in price because, well, no one's really buying them much anymore, so they're not hot items. So I was able to pick up this beauty for only $10, which I'm really happy about, and to think I didn't own it before. I mean, I didn't grow up a Sony kid, I grew up a Nintendo kid, so of course I didn't have these games. But I'm glad to be able to pick them up now. I got this at Retro Game Con, and I was really happy that I did. Really happy that I did. I actually bundled it with another PlayStation game, so maybe I'll talk about that one next. Ha! Fooled you! We're not going to talk about... Oh, that is the one that I bundled with Crash Bandicoot 2. Man, I tried to fool you, it didn't work. Oh well. It's Syphon Filter. Syphon Filter is an over-the-shoulder, third-person action shooter, sort of. But it's really cool, and it's one of the best titles for the PlayStation, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of over-the-shoulder shooters, but I really like Syphon Filter, and I used to play it on emulator a lot. So when I saw it, you know, I didn't have it, so I was like, all right, let's get that too. Why not? So I did, and of course, I don't know why I keep doing this, but yeah, the disc is inside. Why wouldn't it be? Why would I just buy the box or the case in this case? The case. In this case. If I ever do get a box or a case only, I will of course mention that right away. But no, these are the full games, and I'm happy that I have them. Let's talk accessories again, since we already discussed the Sega Control Stick. I love accessories, especially when they are blatantly rip-offs of other consoles. Can I say that? Did you know that Coleco manufactured an expansion module for the ColecoVision so that you could play Atari 2600 games on your ColecoVision, and it was totally legal to do back then? This is the expansion module number 1 for ColecoVision. It allows you to play Atari 2600 games on your ColecoVision. There are the controller ports for the Atari joysticks. It just plugs into the expansion port right here with this sucker. I mean, I already knew this thing existed, but every time I think about it, I'm more and more impressed that Coleco was able to get away with that sort of thing. Because if they did that nowadays, there'd be lawsuits all over the place. Companies might even go out of business. Yeah, really dangerous, but back in the day, you could do that. Copyright law concerning video games was still not heavily put into place. So this thing exists, and it's really cool. I actually got this from a friend of mine. I didn't realize he would be selling some things at Retro Game Con, and so I ran into him there. He said that he wanted $30 for it because he knew me, but I said, well, since you know me, would you do $25? And he said, you know what, sure. You're a collector, I'm a collector. Help you out. Is it wrong of me to ask for less? No, maybe some people might consider it rude, but he has every opportunity to say no, and if he did say no, I would have paid $30. And I would have been happy about it, because $30 is a good price for this thing. But he said yes to $25, so I spent another $5 on something else. Probably one of the things I already showed you here. I don't really remember the order I bought these in, because I bought so many things. But yeah, expansion module number 1 for ColecoVision. This thing exists. I'm really happy that I got this next game, because I didn't have it and I really wanted it. It's not the most common of titles, but it is a staple of the NES library, and that's Little Nemo the Dream Master. Little Nemo the Dream Master is an action platform game based on a comic strip starring the titular character Little Nemo, and it actually takes place in the early 1900s. I think it takes place in like 1905 or something, which is very strange. You didn't really see that a lot. mostly if a game was going to take place in the past, it took place in like the medieval times or like the feudal era of Japan or something like that. So to see a game from the early 20th century is actually pretty cool. So Little Nemo the Dream Master, it's really fun. It's made by Capcom, so you really can't go wrong there. You know, it's got that beautiful purple label with the picture in the center and the Capcom logo on top. It's a classic, and I recommend picking it up because it's a lot of fun. Definitely play this game. Tell me what you think. When I went out yard sailing with Sean, we actually didn't find too much. Although we went to like 7 or 8 different yard sales and 3 estate sales and like 2 roadside thrift stores, we really didn't find much. I talked about Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix, and I talked about Freddy Fish 2. But that was 2 of the only 4 things that we got that weekend. We ended up going to a Savers near my house just to see what they had, and I ended up picking up just some common titles to bulk up my PlayStation collection. So I got MLB 2000 and Dance Dance Revolution Konamix. It's a portmanteau of Konami and Remix. I didn't realize that was a thing. But yeah, I can't say too much about these because I don't really play sports titles from this era, and I suck at Dance Dance Revolution, so let's just stare at them for a little bit. Cool. Thank you, those Savers. These were only $1 a piece. I'm really happy about that. And thank you, Sean, for coming with me. Even though you didn't end up finding anything for yourself, I'm still really glad that you wanted to spend time with me, and I'm always happy to have company. So, thanks a lot, buddy. I love Dungeons & Dragons. My friends and I try to play a lot. Life gets in the way, but we try to play every weekend. With that being said, since I'm a video game collector, of course I want to collect Dungeons & Dragons video games, because for whatever reason there are so many of them, because I suppose the medium treats the quality of the Dungeons & Dragons mythos pretty well. It's an RPG, and you can translate that to a video game, and it's pretty damn cool. So of course I picked up Eye of the Beholder for Super Nintendo. I'm gonna play the shit out of this! It's a Dungeons & Dragons game, are you kidding me? Wow! I have a paltry Dreamcast collection. Like, incredibly paltry. It's like the length of my 2 fingers right here. Sorry, air fingering. But, yeah. These are PlayStation games, and then, like, Dreamcast starts here, so that's really small. So I'm very glad that I had picked up Sonic Shuffle this past month, but at Retro Game Con I also got Choo Choo Rocket. And I'm aware that Choo Choo Rocket was re-released for Game Boy Advance, but fuck you, I wanted it on Dreamcast because this is where it all began. Choo Choo Rocket, get the mice. I mean, save the mice. Save... It's a puzzle game, it's like an action puzzle game. I'm gonna read the back because it's orange, and I love orange. I'm just gonna read it from top to bottom. Online multiplayer madness. It's cat and mouse, chaos in space. Lead your mice to their getaway rockets before your rivals can sneak the scary space cats on board. Features. Online multiplayer gaming brought to you by the Sonic Team. The Sonic Team. And yeah, the Dreamcast had online multiplayer functionality, but this many people used it. 5 fun gameplay modes. Puzzle, stage challenge, 4-player battle, team battle, and network battle, which this many people used. Make your own puzzles. Lobby instantly matches you with up to 3 people online. This many people. Over 75 massive levels. Who wants to play this online with me? Oh, what's that? The service has been disconnected. Oops. Choo Choo Rocket's a great game. I used to play it on emulators a lot when I was first learning about these games, so I'm happy to finally own it in its native form, because playing this with a keyboard sucks. Playing it with a controller rocks my socks right off. So, yeah, it's Choo Choo Rocket. Choo Choo Rocket to neko waka. Okay, we're down to the last 2 things. It's NES Open! Oh man, I'm really happy to have this game. It's not uncommon, but, you know, I didn't have it, so I wanted it. And it's really fun. It's a really good golf game for NES, and I like golf in real life, so getting to combine those 2 things makes me an idiot. But here we go. NES Open. It stars Mario characters, and you play golf. It's really, really fun. The only thing is, if you want to 100% this game, you have to put in a lot of time and effort. I recommend watching Game Dave's video about it because he goes into detail about it. But yeah, it's still fun even if you don't want to get everything there is to see in the game. It's golf on NES, but it's NES Open, so they were taking themselves pretty seriously with this one, and they did a good job. I really love this game, and I recommend it. Give it a shot. No pun intended. Sometimes collecting video games is a sickness. A sickness that can only be cured by purchasing a complete in-box Tiger GameCom. Before I open this and show you this monstrosity, I will explain to you that the Tiger GameCom is a handheld video game console released by Tiger Electronics in 1997. It was their answer to the Game Boy, and it was basically their successor, although there are a multitude of successors, to Tiger Electronic handheld games like Full House and Sonic 3 and Paperboy and Simon's Quest, and there's a whole slew of them. If you were a child in the late 80s and early 90s, you probably got a Tiger handheld at some point because people didn't want to buy Game Boy games for you. But yeah, this was released in 97 by Tiger, and they were like, this is going to be great because not only is it a video game machine with the cartridges, but you can also do phone book, and you can do calendar, and you can do calculator, and you can do high score, and there's a mouth here. I don't know what that mouth is about, what that mouth do, and you can do solitaire. The game machine comes with the solitaire on it. It's like a computer. Let's talk about this thing. So it comes with a small little booklet about the GameCom. This is not an instruction manual. So what the fuck's up with that? And it comes with a game, Lights Out, which is the pack-in game that came with like all Tiger GameComs. Although there was another bundle where you could get Lights Out and another game. I don't remember which game, but Lights Out is the one you pretty much always find. It's just a puzzle game where you try to turn off all the lights on the grid. Because, well, actually, a cool thing about the Tiger GameCom, and one of the reasons why it's fondly remembered by some, is because it's actually the very first touchscreen handheld game console. And I think it's the very first touchscreen game console at all. So eat your heart out, Nintendo DS. Yeah, it's got kind of an okay D-pad. I can't say too much about it other than that. And it has 4 face buttons, but they're arranged in a very shitty way. They're in 2 little trays, so it feels kind of awkward trying to press 2 buttons at the same time. And also, they're laid like right on top of each other. It's not like a traditional diamond. So if I want to press C and A at the same time, I have to have my thumb completely vertical. It sucks. But yeah, unfortunately, my unit doesn't have a battery door because somehow people are dumb. This thing's battery door is supposed to be attached to the console itself, and when you flip it up, it doesn't actually come undone. And that was supposed to prevent the battery door from being lost. But the previous owner of this, I guess, decided that he was going to destroy the norm, and he got rid of the battery door in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, this thing is completely in black and white in 1997, a time when color was dominating the market, and even though the Game Boy Color hadn't come out yet, it was going to, and the Sega Game Gear had color, and that wasn't this thing, and the Atari Lynx had color and wasn't this thing. So why buy this? Which is what a lot of people said, and which is why this thing failed and died. But it is very cute. It comes in this cute little package, but I am still baffled as to why anyone thought that this would be a good idea. But then again, I don't make video games, so I don't ask the questions, even though I do 100% ask the questions. So yeah, it's got a nice little handle on it. This is another thing that bothers me. I'm just going to rant about this very quickly, okay? Here you have a handheld game console, which means, you know, you could take it with you. It could probably fit in your pocket. I mean, it's a little bit bulky, but you could probably get it in there. And the cartridge, you know, you can just pop it in and it doesn't take up any extra room. It just slides right in there. So with the cartridge inside, you can just put it in your pocket and take it with you. But they still decided to put a fucking carry handle on this cardboard box. Why would I take this whole thing with me if I can take out the unit and put it in my pocket? Oh, actually, one other thing. I should make a video on this thing because it's basically what I'm doing right now. You could buy a Tiger Electronics modem and hook it up to your computer, and then you could hook up the modem to this COM port on the top of the unit, but you have to sit at your computer because you have to have the modem hooked up to your computer to use this with the modem to access the internet, and the internet was only text. It's text only on this thing. You can't see graphics on this shit with the internet. Just use your computer. What the hell kind of idea is that? So this thing failed for a lot of reasons. And yeah, that's all I can say about it anymore. I've ranted enough. I'm just really happy to own it because it's a rare piece of video game history, but there it is. The Tiger GameCom active. And that's everything. Whew! Whew boy. I am very happy. I got a lot of stuff in November, and December is here, and I've already picked up quite a couple things. So, yeah. Let's keep it going. This is December now, so I'm just going to say, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Ramadan, pretty much whatever it is you celebrate, and in whatever way, shape, or form, Happy Holidays. And have a very good December, and Happy New Year. I'll see you guys in January in 2019, the third calendar year that I will be doing these videos. Let's get games.